we looked, and I hit him right behind the ear and dunked him right in his tracks. And I was aiming at his shoulder. So I missed him.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there to help some metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey-o.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 212.
Getting up there, boys.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, Nick has told us it is October 22nd.
Yep.
We are in it at this point.
That's really weird.
We are in it at this point. Yeah, it's hard to don't panic. Nobody freak out.
Freak out.
Nobody freak out. It's October 22nd. Plenty of time still.
Calm.
Best days are still ahead.
Yeah. So, well, hey, wherever you guys are listening to us from, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you guys being here. Give us a like, follow, or subscribe, whatever's appropriate for the channel. One of those will give you a notification as to when we drop these episodes, but they're Tuesday and Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern time. If you've written us on Instagram DM or the website, we appreciate you guys reaching out. We really do. And we try to get back to those as diligently as we can, but inevitably we know we get behind, especially this time of year. So bear with us. Appreciate you guys reaching out.
We'll
That's
get to
cool. There's some merch on the website. I showed on the last one. We got some Nalgene's and some hats and some, all kind of cool stuff. So we, have been, I think, pleasantly surprised with the amount of guys that are picking stuff up. So it's cool to be supported in that way. And that's make sure Nick gets paid. So we appreciate that.
You guys are getting paid?
Yeah. So we appreciate that, and Nick really appreciates that.
Yeah, thanks guys. Keep buying it.
And here we go.
Here we go. So like Nick said, if you're listening to this, it's at least October 22nd. We are in it at this point, and have been fortunate probably to catch at least a couple cold fronts here in October, which is a nice time frame for us. So hopefully you've been successful. We're recording this on October the 10th.
Here would be almost a warning. Like I don't like a weather warning. You know what I mean? It's like it's easy to think like, hey, we have all this time. It's possible that one of these hurricanes like ruins the first part of November. I'm not saying that will happen, but there's a possibility with all that's going on there that like we get a 2-week stretch of like just torrential downpours. So you might see these October cold fronts kind of slipping past. You'd be like, oh, I'm buying my time for November. But like, dude, that time of year is like any time of year, weather dependent. But right now we're getting some good fronts. So, I mean, my advice is
get after it.
I
do think that we're imminent here to break that dry cycle. Like we're in about, I think we're supposed to get a little bit of rain with this next front, not much, and then it's supposed to be dry again. But yeah, inevitably we're staring at like a week rain front here.
It seems may happen at some point.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it slipped through like right before season or at the beginning of it. So we're in a nice little pattern here right now. So, but
temperatures have been great.
I hope the weather continues.
So yeah, if by this time you're hunting Ohio, I'm hunting Pennsylvania, and we're probably about to head.
We might be in Illinois
to Illinois, which is where our guest
to.
is from today.
Is he right?
He is. Yeah. So we've got Stan Potts on today.
Yeah.
The Stan Potts.
Give me a minute.
Yeah, that's it, man. And so excited to have Stan on. We were talking about, I think Stan's name came up when we had David Blanton on a couple weeks ago, and talking about the guys that really set a lot of the foundation for a ton of us that, from watching, deer hunting content and feeling like, we should have been in the stand with Stan in Illinois and all the places that those guys had been hunting and stuff. So really cool and excited to get a guy on like Stan, super passionate bow hunter. Of course, we're just talking there pre-podcast of like, we've got a front coming through in Illinois here on Sunday into Monday, and Tuesday and Wednesday should be really good. And I know Stan will be getting after it. So yeah.
One of the greats, man. Stan Potts.
All-time greats, goats.
I'll apologize to our listeners in advance here. There's a little bit of a delay, just because of the connection here or whatever. So just bear with us on that. We're going to do our best not to talk over Stan, and there's a little bit of a delay. That's why. So
that's the reason. All right, let's bring him in, Nick. All right, Stan, we got you, buddy.
How you guys doing, man? Glad to be here.
Well, man, we appreciate it and taking some time this morning. It's kind of, you heard us there in our little opening. It's hard to believe this is going to be dropping October 22nd, and we're going to be in the heat of things at that point, Stan.
Yeah, we should be, and we could be in the heat of things. This is Thursday the 10th, and Sunday we're going to have the first cold front in October here in Illinois, and Monday morning it's going to be in the 30s. Tuesday morning it's going to be in the 30s. We'll get frost, and normally when that happens, the first time in October, they're usually on their feet moving around, and it should be good. We should see a lot of big deer tip over next week.
Stan, what part of Illinois are you in, just roughly?
I'm right in the center of the state. I live just outside the town of Clinton. I live just a few miles out of town, and that's right in the center of the state. And all my hunting, or most of my hunting in Illinois now, is west of me over in Lincoln, Illinois, just on the west side of Lincoln. Me and a few of my buddies have a big lease over there. We got about 2,000 acres leased, and this is our 8th year to have it. And it's been an absolute blessing to have that, and have both my sons, Terry and Tim, there with me. So the last 8 years, I've got to hunt with and around both of my boys, which hasn't been the case in quite a few years because I've been traveling all over filming.
Yep.
And it's just tough. I mean, so this has probably been the best 8 years of my whole hunting career as far as being able to be with those boys, and those boys are tipping over some giants.
That's awesome, man. And I know, Stan, when we first connected, so you're spending a good chunk of your time in Arizona, right?
In the wintertime, whenever I've got my bucks in Illinois killed and I'm done in Missouri and other places, and Brenda's done, we take off for Arizona, and we spend 5 or 6 months out there through the winter. And I love to play golf. Used to be a tournament bass fisherman, used to love to bass fish, and I quit playing golf 35 or 40 years ago. Well, I got back into it just a few years ago, and now we live in a community east of Mesa, about 15 miles. It's a gated community. It's got 2 Nicholas golf courses, and I play golf all winter. But I am trying to get a Coues deer tag.
Oh yeah.
This will be the 3rd year, and I haven't drawn it yet, but I should draw it soon. And then I'll go down to Tucson and get me a Coues deer. I've never shot a Coues deer, but I want to shoot a big Coues deer. I'm only a couple of deer away from the 8 whitetail slam. It takes 8 subspecies, and I need that one, and then I need the one in Florida, and then I'm done.
Wow. That's very cool, man. Yeah, I mean, that's the Coues deer down there. I think a lot of people forget about that population down there, and obviously it gets kind of overshadowed by a lot of the big Midwest deer and stuff. But man, hunting those Coues deer, and you see the challenges and the terrain and stuff, that's a cool territory for it.
Oh yeah, it's desert country, and Coues deer are real. They're a different type deer. I mean, they're real. I don't know, real skittish, for the lack of a better term. I mean, they're just hard to get them to hold still, do whatever. You water hole hunt them. you fence line hunt them wherever they're jumping the fence, and you do a lot of spot and stalk. So
Yeah.
but it's tough. It's real tough.
There was a eight deer slam you mentioned. Is it whitetail or it's all species of deer?
Yeah,
or?
it's a whitetail slam. It's a whitetail slam. Tom Miranda, my buddy, he come up with it several years ago, and he actually had a show for a while on the Sportsman's Channel called Whitetail Slam.
I do remember that.
There's 8 of them.
All right.
There's 8 subspecies, and a lot of guys are trying to get that whitetail slam, just like people try to get the all 4 of the sheep, the slam and the sheep, the elk, and things like that. And of course, whitetail hunting and whitetail hunters outnumber all the other big game hunters put together. So a whitetail slam is starting to catch on. It's a pretty cool deal. I want one.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to get one.
Heck yeah, you are. Well, I've definitely seen the show. I didn't know if it was the same slam you're talking about. Do you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's it.
Not to put you on the spot, can you rattle off the 8 subspecies?
Maybe.
We'll help you too. Not that I know what they are, but we'll try.
You got the Florida deer, which is that, and then you got the Mississippi and just the east edge of Texas down on the coast there, and then you got the one from the Northwest. You got the one from the Midwest. You got the one from the East, and then you got the northern whitetail. Is that 8?
That's 6.
Well, we talked about the coos deer.
Our coos deer are considered whitetails?
Yep.
I didn't know that. Okay, so that's 7.
Yeah.
What about like South Texas maybe?
There's 8 of them.
Yeah, like a Texas, Mexico.
There's 8 of them. I mean, you can Google it. Yeah, you can Google it. You can Google whitetail slam, and they're on there. I'm pretty sure there's 8 of them.
Yep,
I
got them all, but the Florida whitetail and coos deer.
And Stan, is that Florida whitetail like the key deer type of deer, or is it just like a Florida?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it is. Keys.
Yep.
I think some people call them Seminole whitetail. That's it, and that's really the only place you can get them.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that northwestern subspecies? Is that like Wyoming?
I would say Idaho, Washington.
Yeah, Wyoming, Montana, Washington.
Yeah,
up in that upper end there.
Yeah.
Washington. That's a Pennsylvania slang there. Washington.
Yeah, Washington.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally, Stan?
Right here. I was born and raised right here. I was born in Bloomington, Illinois, just 22 miles north of Clinton at the Bloomington Hospital, but I grew up and lived right here, and then I moved away from here and went to Wyoming and hunted Wyoming for quite a bit, but I basically went out there to run a trap line. I was a trapper in Illinois here and in the Midwest, and a canine trapper, foxes and coyotes.
Yeah.
And then I went to Wyoming for 2.5 years, and I laid a line out there, 150-mile long trap line, and trapped coyotes, cats, and foxes. And that was back when the long-haired fur was worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was getting out of some of my big cats, I was getting $450 for big toms, and as much as $275 for females.
Wow.
And I was in heaven. I love to trap, and I'll tell you why I love to trap so much, and I don't do it anymore. I've got buddies that do it, but it kind of goes hand in hand with whitetail hunting. And a lot of people throughout my career, if I could pinpoint one thing, and they've asked me this question many, many times, if I could pinpoint one thing that maybe I do a little bit different, or maybe I've got a knack for, is stand location. And trapping helps me so much. It helped me so much because set location is everything. And stand location is everything, especially when we're talking about bow hunting big whitetails.
Yep.
There's a heck of a lot of difference in seeing big whitetails and killing big whitetails. And stand location means everything when you're bow hunting. You got to be in the right spot. And, you know, I know these guys that shoot them way out there, 50, 60, 70, even 80 yards and more, you know, and that's good for them, but that's not good for me. I mean, I like to hunt these big whitetails. I like to get them in close, 40 or under, and most of my stand locations are set up other than when I'm on the food plots.
Right.
But, you know, I hunt the food plots early, I hunt the food plots late. But my time to hunt, and when I've killed most of my big whitetail, is from the 25th of October until the 1st of December during the rut. Whenever you got late pre-rut, and then all through the rut and early post-rut.
Yep.
That's what I love. I love to figure them out, get my sets up, and figure them out when they're cruising, looking for does. You know, I don't have to tell you guys this. You know that. I mean,
well, we like to hear it from you.
These big these big Midwestern whitetails, they're the smartest animal in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They live around people all the time. And to be able to set up and see these big deer coming through the timber at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, cruising, mouth half open, tail cocked up, looking for a doe, just cruising, and you're in the right spot, and he cruises right in there at 15 or 20 yards. Yeah, thump. It does not get any better.
It doesn't, man.
And also, you know, it's the same as we're in hunting the timber, and if they are with a hot doe, I mean, you'll have them just all around you, just grunting and chasing her, and there'll be bucks here and bucks there. Just one I killed just a couple of years ago was it was a big 8-pointer. And we called him the Fat Bottom 8. I mean, he was 6.5 years old. I don't remember what he scored now, but he was probably a 50, and that's a big 8.
Oh yeah.
And I had a stand set up for him with a north wind right on the edge of a bluff, and it dropped down into the river bottom behind me, and I had a north wind right in my face, all the hardwood timber. Well, he come up out of that bottom, but he come up out of that bottom to my west about 70 or 80 yards, and he was right on a doe. And he was in the mode of, he was breeding that doe. I mean, he didn't breed her in front of us, but I mean, he was not just chasing full out. I mean, everywhere she went, he was just kind of right behind her, and she would stop and feed on acorns, and he'd just stand there, and they worked their way right into me. And I ended up shooting him at 30 yards, I think it was. I grunted and stopped him because they were going to go back down into the river bottom. And, you know, he's 6.5 years old. Just
doesn't get any better, man.
That's right. We all talk about, you know, the magic number in today's world is 200 inches.
Yep.
We all talk about that. And I've been fortunate enough to shoot 5 of them. Well, I really don't think that there's a lot of difference between a 6-year-old 200 and a 6-year-old 150.
No.
There's really no difference. They're both the same as far as difficulty getting them in front of you, if you know what I mean.
Yep, absolutely, man. Well, Stan, you talk about moving out there for a trap line. I mean, did you grow up in a hunting family?
I grew up at bird hunting and rabbit hunting and stuff like that with my dad and my grandfather, and they weren't deer hunters, but you got to remember back in the 60s, I shot my first deer with a bow in 1967.
Wow.
Standing on a limb with a little Browning recurve. And, you know, there wasn't a gun season in my county for hunting deer. You know, in Illinois, deer season, as far as gun season, shotgun, it's county by county.
Yep.
You apply for county by county. Well, I live in DeWitt County, and in DeWitt County, there wasn't a gun season for deer until 1970. And that's in relation to the numbers of deer.
Yep.
When they first opened it up, it was 19 I don't remember, 57 or 60 or something like that, but that was down in southern Illinois in Polk County and a few counties down there was where the first gun seasons were.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first started bow hunting, you couldn't hunt with a gun here. You hunted with a bow, and then of course they just increased and increased and increased, and you know, Illinois has got to be one of the top 3 or 4 in the world as far as big deer go.
And so with that,
people ask me go ahead.
So with the bow side of things, Stan, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but were you, was it more of a, like, this is the only option to hunt deer, so I might as well pick up a bow and go hunt it? Or what got you in to pick up a recurve?
Well, there was no compounds back then.
Yep.
1967. I mean, there might have been one, you know, that was being developed or whatever, but there wasn't any. It was recurve and longbow. Mm-hmm. And then when the compounds came around, then I started using a compound bow. Mm-hmm. You know, and I've killed a lot of deer with a recurve bow. Mm-hmm. But then I started using a compound, and you know, whenever they came out, and I got used to them and just started using them, and I just evolved just like the bow did. I started using them, but you know, the recurve or the longbow, there's not a lot of difference between the two, a little bit, but it's tough. I mean, you're not going to shoot long yardage. Mm-mm. You know, you got to shoot all the time back in those days because it was all instinctive shooting. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't sights and releases and things like that. You use your release was your fingers, and you know, 30 yards was max, but you know, 15 or 20 is where most recurve and longbow shooters were deadly.
Yep.
And then when the shotgun season opened in 1970 in this county, I almost hate to tell you that story.
No,
I got a shotgun permit. You know, I couldn't wait. I wanted to hunt. You know, I've shot big deer with a bow, with a recurve, with a compound, with a shotgun, with a muzzleloader, and a centerfire rifle, and I love shooting them with everything. Mm-hmm. You know, I just love hunting those big whitetails. But when 1970, when it rolled around the first season and I drew a tag, oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. There was a split season. You had a 3-day season, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then you skipped a week, and then you had the second season, which would have been after Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. The first season was around the 20th, give or take a day or two of November, and then the second season would always be right around the first part of December.
Yep.
Well, I shot a 10-pointer that was probably, looking back on him, he might have been 130. But I shot him in the second gun season, and you had to check him in at a check station, and they had questions on when you signed the sheet. They weighed them and everything, and they had questions on how many deer you saw, how many times you shot, this and that. When I killed that deer, I'd already shot 19 times.
Oh my goodness! Whoa!
At that
and
deer,
never hit, and never hit anything. You know, it was just, I don't know why, I was just a nervous wreck. And I think I was shooting at him just like I was used to shooting at pheasants and stuff.
Yeah.
Just pointing at him and pulling the trigger instead of using the sights and bearing down like you're supposed to. And when I shot this deer, I was in my stand and I'd already missed a big doe that morning. And then I got out about 10 o'clock. And, well, I was actually sitting on the ground. I went over to my one buddy. There was 3 of us hunting that farm. And I talked to him, and then we eased out of there, and we went down to where our other buddy was. And when we got about 60 or 70 yards from him, you know, I give him a little whistle, you know, just a little light whistle. And he wouldn't turn around and look at us. And then finally he put his hand behind him like this and just told us to hold up. And then we could tell he was watching something. He was watching this buck come across this CRP and kind of a little tree planting, and he went into this fence row that he was in. Then he come out, and we snuck up there. He motioned us. We snuck up there. Well, we knew he was going to come out of that fence row and go across that other one. So we spread out and started easing up that way, and I saw him. I saw his rack in that CRP, and he was walking. I just put it he was probably too far to shoot at, with a shotgun. He was probably out there about 80, 90 yards, and I shot, boom, and down he went. And we just went crazy. The three of us run up there, and we run right past him. We couldn't find him anywhere. Well, it was a waist high or more, the weeds, and we couldn't find him anywhere. And then all of a sudden we heard something rustle, and it was back behind us. We run right past him, and he was just kicking a little bit. He was done for. And we run up there, and I just was so excited. I just smoked him. And then we couldn't find the hole. We couldn't find where I hit him. And we kept looking. Finally, we looked, and I hit him right behind the ear and dunked him right in his tracks. And I was aiming at his shoulder. So I missed him by a foot or more.
Yeah.
I just got lucky.
That's funny, man. Was that, were you using slugs back then?
Yeah, I was using slugs. I was shooting an 870, actually.
Oh, yeah.
870 slug gun. You could get them back then, and they had a little 20-inch barrel on them with rifle sights.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's funny, man.
Well, it is, but what's so cool about it is how long I've been doing this, guys. I've been doing this a long, long time, and I've been doing this a lot longer than either one of you are old. You wasn't even born, but I can remember all those hunts, like that hunt and my first deer with a bow. I can remember all the details so vividly. It's just crazy. Yeah. And that's why we're crazy.
Oh yeah.
Over hunting these big whitetail
Well,
deer.
I mean, it's what it's what you live for. It's a weird thing. It's a hard thing to describe to people that you talk to a lot of hunters, and like you said, Stan, you've been in this game for a long time. You've talked to a lot of hunters. There's certain hunters that you talk to that kind of unspoken, that they just get it different than other people, and you're like, this guy or girl, whoever it is like, they're out there shed hunting, they're out there scouting, they're planting food plots. Year round, they're thinking about deer hunting.
That's right. Even when I'm on the golf course, I'm thinking about it. I mean, it's 24/7. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
And when it gets to be this time of year, it's unbelievable. And fortunately, my health has been really good, and I can still go, and I can still climb up the trees, and I still hunt and hang on stands and buck steps and climbing sticks, and I'm in my 70s, so it's. I hope I can just keep on doing it as long as it possibly can.
You still hunting with your compound, Stan?
Yeah, oh yeah. What I've been trying to do in the last few years is and some people don't like this, but I've been trying to go and kill one with a crossbow early off of a food plot or something like that whenever it became legal to use crossbows here.
Yep. Yeah.
And then I put that away, and then I pick up my compound, and then I can shoot 2 bucks in Illinois, and then I want to shoot my second with a compound, and I've only shot one with a shotgun, probably one in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, and all the rest of them been one with a crossbow and one with my compound.
Yep.
And I try to shoot 5.5 or older deer on our lease, and but I like to do it all. But
the Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
It's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance.
Sure.
The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. Okay, technical issues. We have them resolved. No big deal.
Back in business.
So I guess where we kind of left off there, Stan. So you killed that buck with a gun. Obviously had a cool celebrations with your buddies doing that. I guess at that point, because you said, what was that, 1970 that you said that gun season was?
Yeah, it was first gun season. And then we start talking about, I hunt with a crossbow and try to shoot one with a crossbow. And then I pick up my compound, and I don't shoot one during the gun season, maybe one out of the last 5 or 6 years.
Gotcha.
And we kill one with a crossbow early. And you guys were asking me about why I do that. Well, I love to hunt with everything.
Yep.
And Brenda, y'all know who Brenda is, my wife.
Oh, yeah.
And she films me when we're crossbow hunting, and we hunt off the ground most of the time.
Okay.
I just cut some rush knolls or whatever, and we just tuck back in along the edge of a food plot or a fresh picked cornfield and brush right in. And with that crossbow, I mean, that is so cool to do off the ground. And we do hunt out of box blinds some the same way. But, to get up in my climbers or up in my hang on stands and stuff, she can't get up there very good. And it's tough for her. So that's why we really started with the crossbow, for her to film me, and her footage is the best. Well, just all you got to do is watch the show. I mean, it's the best stuff. She's as good as there is, and so that's one of the main reasons that I'm hunting with a crossbow, and the other one is because I love it.
Yeah. Well, Stan, you're a lifelong Illinois guy. One of the things that we kind of hear talking to people who've been Illinois residents or who have just hunted Illinois is they're like, the changes that the deer herd has seen, since even the 90s, has been substantial in a lot of areas. In fact, right now we've got a ton of people talking about how EHD just seems to keep pommeling over and over again some of these Illinois deer herds. I mean, what do you think about where deer hunting is in Illinois right now compared to like what you've been able to experience in your lifetime?
Well, where it's at now, it's just technology and everything's so different. We're using those cell cameras. There's more deer than there's ever been. There's more big bucks than there's ever been, but that's probably because there's more people managing, more people planting food plots. We used to not do that stuff, and the deer herd's in good shape. But I will say this, that we do have a problem with EHD, and it seems like we're having it more and more, and we've got it this year right now. We've already found 2 big bucks, 2 big 10s, 50, 60 bucks. One was still in velvet, so he died, before September, and the other hadn't died yet, but he was getting ready to. He was still on his feet, but he was in bad shape, and he was at least in the mid 50s. And when we were hunting the last couple of evenings that we've hunted since it opened the first, I can smell something down in the bottom. I can smell death, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I smelled that when we were out there doing some scouting back in September, and I went into the wind to where that smell was, and I just never could locate it. There was something there, but I could locate it. And then
we found a couple of does, but we've got a problem with it, and I don't know how bad it's going to be. A lot of our big bucks have not showed up on camera, which scares me a little bit, but they are starting to show up now. And I think they've been on the acorns, and that's the reason we haven't seen them too much, because this is an acorn year like no other. I mean, the oaks are loaded, especially the white oak. So that's where I see deer hunting. I mean, it's just evolved so much with the technology and everything, and more people hunting, and it is what it is.
Well, Stan, taking a step back, when you were talking about going out west and running trap lines, at what point did call it the hunting industry side pop into your life?
Well, I shot a deer. I shot a deer back in the early 80s, 83, 84. That was a number 3 typical in the world with a bow.
Okay.
And I don't know where he is now. He's 196 inch net, 212 gross typical. He's a big 11 point. And he's probably still in the top 10 or somewhere right there. I think he's number 2 or 3 in Illinois, but
wow.
I lost my train of thought. What was we,
So how did that deer get you into the industry then? Is that how people noticed you at that point, basically?
Right. And at that point, I shot that deer, and it was in North American whitetail. And then there were some magazine articles besides that. And then I had killed a lot of other big bucks, but obviously not the number 3 in the world. I only shot one of those, but I killed several big bucks, and people wanted to write about it. People that were writing books about whitetails and stuff. And so I got to doing that. And then I started running a big whitetail operation, Heartland Lodge. Brenda and I went in there and started that up, managed it for a couple of years. And Mossy Oak came, Cuz and Tack Robinson and Troy Riz and all the guys come up to hunt from Mossy Oak and hunt with us. And Cuz asked me if I would do some hunting on film. And I said, sure, I would, and we did a little bit, but we didn't do no good. But then Mark and Terry Drury came up, and they're great buddies of mine, have been for years and years. And Mark asked me at that time, he said he had a company called Mad Calls. That's how he got started. And he actually got started. He was a turkey hunter. I think he's like 5-time world champion natural voice caller.
Oh, yeah.
But he asked me would be willing to go on film, because that's when they were coming out with their videos, and do some stuff on deer calling with this power call, talk about it on film. And I said, sure, I'd do something like that. So him and I and Terry went out in the woods over at Heartland, and I just sat on a stump. They set the camera up, and we just started talking about calling deer and calls and hunting big deer. And to be on camera for me was not hard at all. It was a natural thing. I don't know why. I guess I was blessed that way. Some people get nervous when you turn the camera on, but and we made a power calling video, and we just hit it out of the park, and most of it was all in one take. And then from there, then Hunter Specialties came calling. Then I started doing their video series, and then that for several years. And then when TV started, I was on TNN a few times back hunting. But then when the hunting shows started popping up on the Outdoor Channel, Pat Reeve and Greg Miller and I got together. It was Pat's idea, actually. And I was real tight with the guys at North American Whitetail. Gordon and I were great buddies. Gordon came up and hunted with me in Illinois. And Pat come up with this idea about having North American Whitetail television. and it was his idea. And he asked me about taking it to North American Whitetail and presenting that, because I was tight with Gordon and he was an executive managing editor.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did, and we had a meeting at the Wisconsin Deer Classic when we were all up there. I was giving seminars, and the idea was a hit. They wanted to do it. And so Pat produced the show. Pat and I and Greg all hosted the show. And Gordon was doing hunts on the show, and Dr. James Kroll.
Yep.
So there was 5 of us. How we started North American Whitetail, and then everything else just evolved. I'd done a lot of stuff on ESPN for Whitetail Country, and then I went on to do stuff on the Outdoor Life Network, and then they changed to Versus. They call it Versus, and I've co-hosted a lot of shows, but I've always been on North American Whitetail since its inception. Pat went a different direction after a couple years, and then Greg and I did it for a while in the studio, just the 2 of us, and then Greg moved on and wanted to do something with his son. So Gordon and I done it. And now I don't do much at all in the studio, but I still do 2 to 4 hunts a year for North American Whitetail, and that's all I do. And I had a show that we owned, Brenda and I, called Whitetail Explorer, and we did that for a few years, and that was very successful. But then I just wanted to wind it down.
Yep.
Traveling and being gone that much, I didn't want to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. So I cut everything down but North American Whitetail, and that's how I'll finish my career, and hopefully I'll finish it a long, long time in the future.
Yeah. Well, and like you said earlier, right now you really get a lot of enjoyment hunting that lease that you guys have, especially with your 2 boys. And I assume, even with as much hunting as you did throughout that career, a lot of that wasn't able to be with your 2 kids.
Yeah, that's right. And well, I had for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, I don't remember what it was, back in the middle 2000s, 5, 6, 7, 8, right in there.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, my oldest son, was my cameraman.
Oh, yeah.
I brought him in, and he ran with me everywhere. And, we was all over. We was hunting anywhere from 6 to 10 states a year, and we killed a lot of big ones. We killed a 200 with a muzzleloader in Ohio. Mm-hmm. He was with me on, and, a lot of people, that when I've given hundreds and hundreds of seminars, and I love them. I love meeting all the hunters and everything. And a lot of those, the question is, what's my favorite big deer I've ever killed, the favorite hunt I've ever been on? And I always say that muzzleloader hunt in Ohio is it, because Tim was with me and he was filming. Yep. We was up there in late October, and I was hunting with Joel Snow, one of my buddies. And we saw this buck the day before Halloween, and he came out, and I had a decoy, and where he came out of the thicket into this little grass field, he could not see my decoy, and I grunted and rattled a little bit at him, and he kept looking, but they're not stupid. And he came out, and then about a 135 or 40 come out, and he looked over and saw it, and turned and walked over and bristled up and walked that buck out of the field and walked into the timber, and he never did come out. Well, the next night I moved my decoy. Mm-hmm. We was in the same spot, and he come out again, and he could see my decoy, and I grunted at him, and he looked over there and saw the decoy, and I could tell by his body language that he was going to come in. He was going to come over there.
Yep.
Out pops that deer. That other deer. That deer, and he looks at the decoy, and he looks at that deer, and that deer's a lot closer, and he turned, he walked over to that deer, walked him out of the field again, then he didn't come back out, so I didn't get him. Well, we were supposed to leave then. That was Halloween, the 31st of October, and we needed to move on, and I told Joe, I said, I'd like to stay for another day or two to see. Well, I did, and he never showed up. And of course, that's right first does are starting to pop. So I'm sure he had a doe somewhere and he was gone.
Yep.
So I asked Joel, what do you think about me coming back between Christmas and New Year? Because the muzzleloader season at that time in Ohio was a 4-day season, right between Christmas and New Year. And he said, absolutely, come on back. He said, I won't even hunt that property. You know, maybe, I said, that buck will come back to his home core area when the rut's over, and maybe we can get a chance at him. So
Yep.
that's what we did. We went back with a muzzleloader, got there and got everything unloaded. And the next day, season opened, and Joel said, well, I got this place, really good spot in the morning for morning hunts, good access. We can slip in there. I said, I'm not hunting in the morning. And he said, what do you mean hunting in the morning? It's opening day. We got 4 days. I said, I'm not going in there and try to and chance of bumping that deer out in the dark. I want him to be coming out of that thicket just like he did back in late October. I said, you know, and I'll give myself 2 days. I'll give myself the first afternoon and the second afternoon. If we haven't seen him, then we'll hunt the mornings and afternoons the last 2 days. We went in there that afternoon. He came out, but he came out 300-400 yards at least or farther away. Across the draw he was in another field.
Yeah.
And same buck was with him. And we was sitting in a tree and we was watching him, and it was early, you know, so I thought, you know, he may come all the way over here, but you never know. And then that other buck picked his head up, and here he come, and he walked all the way across that field and walked down in that draw and come out. Well, when he got about 200 or 300 yards from that big one looked up and he noticed that his buddy was leaving. So he just fell right in behind him. And he came on the same route. And he come all the way across, come through that draw and come out and walked right out there in that grass field. And he was 125 yards. And I asked Timmy, I said, you on him? I said, as soon as he turns just a little bit and gives me a broadside shot. And he said, I'm on him, Dad, whenever you're ready. And I just smoked him, and he took off. And of course, when you shoot with muzzleloader, you know, you can't see that.
Can't see it all.
And I turned, I said, did I get him? He said, you got him, Dad. You smoked him right behind the front shoulder. And I said, are you sure? Because I couldn't see him. I'm sure, Dad, you hit him good. Because he run out of the field, and he ran about 60 yards. And you could tell he was struggling a little bit, and he run into the timber. He didn't go down in that first 60 yards. And Tim said, Dad, he's got to be down in there. He said, I said, you swear it? And I held my head up, and he goes, I swear. So we did our cutaways and did everything we needed. We got down. It was still daylight. And we got over there, and by the time we got over to the edge of the timber where he went in, it was getting dark. So we had the light on the camera. It was getting dark, and we went in there, and there was a little bit of blood, but they don't bleed with a muzzleloader too much. And we just went about 30 or 40 yards, and I looked up with my flashlight, and there he was piled up. And that's why it's my favorite hunt I've ever done, because Tim was with me in October. And he was with me all through the month of November. And we kept talking about going back. And we killed some other deer before we went back in other states. And then we went back, formulated a plan. And it all come together. And I got to celebrate, share that with my son.
Well, that's a big thing that we talk about, Stan. Like, even with this buck, like I was super happy last week to kill this buck on my place in Ohio, but just the way that it worked out, like I was all by myself, you know, and so there is an excitement and an enjoyment in that, but you know, it also is amazing when you got it to share with people that you love to be around during that time of year.
Oh, it's the best. And, you know, I've been blessed. The Lord has blessed me to shoot a lot of big whitetails. But all of them that had either Brenda or my boys with me, and the ones that they've killed, and I've been with them when I filmed Brenda killing several bucks, and those are the best.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love killing back when I used to hunt without a camera. I love shooting the giants when I was out there by myself, but nothing compares to being out there with your wife or one of your sons When they shoot a big, you shoot a big one, and you get to celebrate it all.
Yeah.
It's you know, people that haven't done it, they just don't understand.
Yeah.
They just understand what it does for people like you guys and me that are that this is our life. I mean, this is what we love. I mean, the Lord is first, my family second, and big whitetails are third. That's the way my life's been my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a tough discussion to have with people, and you know, it's interesting when you start to have conversations, especially with some of the new hunters and stuff, that, you know, I think, like you said, technology and things have changed. Like, we kind of talk about it all the time on here, Stan, and that, you know, growing up, for a lot of us, it was just, you know, you went out there, you made mistakes, you walked areas, you scouted, you read sign. Like, there were just, it was a different time frame than today, when, you know, a lot of people were using cell cams and looking at maps online, and, you know, you can be very effective that way. It's just a completely different style than it was, you know, even 20 years ago.
Oh, it is. It's totally different, you know, and you do make mistakes. You learn by your mistakes. And believe me, I've made it more than probably most people. I mean, just stupid things, because that's what they do. They dictate to your brain. I mean, you just lose your mind when a great big one. You want to hear a deer story?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. I was in the stand, and I was sitting on the edge of a cornfield, a little pick cornfield, and a big thicket behind me. And I looked across the cornfield, and there was no dirt lane out the other side of the cornfield. And then there was a big field, and then big timber way across. But it was probably 500 yards over to that other timber. And this is rut, and I look out there, and I see a big buck coming across that field. And he's 400, 500 yards away, and I can see his rack, so I know he's giant. Well, he's just coming my way. He's coming towards my cornfield, and I'm in that tree. Well, there's a dip in the field out there where he's at when he gets about 100 yards from that dirt road, and he goes down in that dip. And when he does, I got my rattling antlers, and I just turned around and just smacked them together as hard as I could, like I was trying to break them. And I just rattled only for about 15 seconds, and then hung them up. Picked up my bow, and when I picked up my bow, I heard something behind me coming through the brush. Ka-chung, 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 you know. I mean, definitely a deer walking, and he's coming to the horns. But I don't know. He could have been a rat head. He could have been whatever, you know. And so I just kind of picked my bow up, because I'm in a forked tree, and I got to take my arrow like this, and I turn around, and I'm looking behind me, and I got a shooting lane right there. And I'm looking behind me, and this deer's coming, and I can hear him in the leaves, you know, walking. It's real dead still, walking. And he's getting close. And I'm starting to panic, because it sounds like he's right under the tree. And I'm thinking, where in the world is he? All of a sudden, he comes around a mulliflora rose bush. And in my opinion, and I've seen a lot of them, and I've shot a lot of them, he was a 6x6 typical frame. We named him Willie. And I believe that he was world record without a doubt typical. And he's coming with his head down, and he's going to walk 12 or 13 yards in my shooting lane. And just when he's getting close to that shooting lane, I'm getting ready to draw back, and he's got his head down, and he's just walking. And when just before, about 2 steps before he gets to my shooting lane, he just does a stutter step and turns and starts walking away from me. He wouldn't go through that opening. He just walking away from me, and he went down into this waterway, and I couldn't see him through the brush, and I thought he was going down the waterway. Well, I panicked. You know how you do, because a buck like that, I'd ever seen in my life, and unbelievable. And so I just reach over and grab my antlers that are hanging right there, and I just just click him a little to stop him and maybe bring him back. Well, he never went anywhere. He was only about 25 yards down there standing in the brush. I just couldn't see him. And when I clicked those antlers, that big rack, he was probably 24, 25 inside. I mean, he just whirled around and looked right up at me.
Oh.
He looked at me like that, and then Jumped waterway, run up on this little side of the bank and stood there and looked back at me. I'm a 6x6, 10-inch brows, 14-inch 2s, 13-inch 3s, 10, 11, 12-inch 4s, 5 or 6-inch 5s. Well, just add it up.
Yeah.
And clean. There's no nothing. And he takes off, and I am just sick that I screwed that up. So I lift my bow up, and I turn back around in the field, and I go to hang my bow up, and I look out in the cornfield, and here comes the one I rattled at. He's about 60 yards coming right at me. And he's a 175-plus inch deer. He's So as I'm picking my bow around, I see him, and I start inching around. I don't want him to see me moving. And when I did, I bumped those antlers just a little bit, and I obviously loosened them on the hook that they was hanging on, and they fell. Blam! They hit the platform of my stand. They went straight. I was on a fence line, and they hung in the fence, rattling and shaking around like that, and he just threw the brakes on. Just looking at those antlers in the fence, and he just raised his head straight up and looked at me up there in the tree. Off he goes. Runs out in the middle of the cornfield, looks back and blows a couple more times, crosses the road, gone. I screwed 5 or 80-inch deer and a 210 or 20-inch typical, all because you lose your mind when those big deer get in on you. And that was how you lose.
Oh, my word.
That happened to me right there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that picture is just ingrained in your brain at this point.
It is. And, Willie disappeared. I mean, when we saw him one other time, and he just disappeared. I don't know whatever happened to him. We had never seen him. This is November. We had never seen him before that day. And we had 5 or 6 bucks that we were seeing that were all world-class typical deer. We were hunting behind the Clinton Power Station before they ever had a special hunt there, and we had a piece of property that we could hunt that nobody else could hunt. We got permission. And they were coming off. It's like we was hunting up against no hunting.
Yeah.
No hunting. Hundreds and hundreds of acres. There was a buck we called Whitey that was a mega giant, 11-point typical, that was in the 90s, if not 200. Willie, the one I ended up killing, that was is 212 gross. And then another big 10 that was just unbelievable. Wally was an 11-pointer. He was as big as Willie. He was maybe even a little heavier, but he wasn't a 6x6. He was a 6x5.
Mm-hmm.
All those bucks back then, and that was the absolute best few years of big buck hunting, seeing big bucks that I've ever had in my life.
Wow. I can't imagine that. That was a morning hunt that you saw that all happened.
No, that was an afternoon hunt, but it wasn't late afternoon. It was rut, and it was probably 2:00 in the afternoon when I saw him coming across that field and rattling.
I can't imagine
that 212 typical I killed.
Yeah,
I saw that deer only one time before that, and I had him at 40 yards walking in that cornfield the year before, and he's walking with his head down. And he's going to be 40 yards, and 40 yards is about the max. I don't like to shoot at him much farther than that.
Yeah.
And I threw back, and when he come into that hole, I could shoot through. Back then, I was stupid enough that I didn't grunt at him. I'm at full draw, and I went, just squeaked at him.
Yeah.
He took off like he shot at him with a shotgun. He took off running. And just ran about 30 or 40 yards out there in the open, turned around, looking all around, turned around, and just went out of there. So when I killed that deer, he was walking. I rattled him in. He came in the next year, and he come right in. I rattled and, hung the antlers up, picked up the bow, and it was just seconds, 20 seconds maybe. And I heard a noise. And so I turned and looked to my left, and there was kind of a waterway that led down to a pond, but it was real thick. It was that thicket that Willie would come through. And I saw a squirrel jump up on a tree, and he went up the outside of the tree, Well, my brain told me that's what I heard, rustling over there. So I turned back around, looking to my right, looking out in front of me. And then I heard it again, choo, choo. And I just turned around real slow and looked down there in that waterway, and there he stood, 40 yards away. He was standing there looking for the bucks that he thought was fighting in there. And then he went across the waterway, and he went into a thicket. And he's kind of angling through that thicket, and I can't see him in there because it's real thick. But there's two trails, and one comes out at 40 and one comes out at 20. And I just turned around in my stand and got ready because I know he's going to come out, but I don't know which one. And I'm just looking out to the side, and I'm waiting and waiting. I can hear him walking in the leaves, and then all of a sudden I see his rack. He's got his head down, and his rack. And he's going to come out in an opening there, and he's on that 20-yard run. And when he walked out, I knew not to stop him. So I drew back, and he's just walking slow. I drew back, and he's 20 yards, and I put it back about his last rib because he was slightly quartering away. And, I remembered that stuff. And I just touched it off, smack. He went burning out of there, gone, crash, boom, bam. And then I thought I heard a crash way down there, but it was just dead silence then, and I thought, well, I'm going to wait because it was early. It was an afternoon, and I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait at least a half an hour before I get down and sneak up there and look. Because I'd seen the arrow hit him, and then I started thinking, oh, I hit him back too far. Oh, I did, how your mind works. Well, I was going to wait 30 minutes. I was on the ground in 5. And I just got up there by the tree standing, then went back to the tree. Went up there and went back to the tree and thought, you know what? Just get out of here. Oh, you hit him. Get out of here. Go get some help. So I come to town, got my 2 buddies, and we went back out there and we started blood trailing him. And he wasn't bleeding much. And I hit him quartering away.
Yep.
And it went all the way through up and lodged in that off shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
There's no exit. And it was a little bit high, but it had to be a little high to go down because I was high in the tree. I was probably 25 feet or better above him because of the slope in the ground. And we were on our hands and knees, and we'd lost the blood. We'd only went about 30 yards on the blood and lost the blood, and we're looking, and he broke out into a big grass field with honey locust trees in it. Oh. And so those 2 guys, I said, why don't you guys go up there to the right? There's a big fence up there. You know where that fence is? I said, if he jumped that fence, he had to jump that fence. There's got to be, when he hits the ground, there's got to be some blood somewhere, and I'll just start looking down these little game trails. And I got on my hands and knees, and I'm looking at these game trails, looking at the grass to see, where it swiped past his body. Nothing. And I went about 40 yards, and I stood up, and there was a big oak tree down there that I knew where it was, and there was always a big giant scrape under it, And for some reason, I had a wheat light on, but I didn't have it on my head. I had it in my hand. And I was looking, and I just shined the light down there by that scrape, and I could see his right side sticking up. That crack I heard was him going down, and I went running down there, and I wasn't ready for that. Not in 1983. Not a 212 typical. And I just picked his head up, put it in my lap. I just couldn't believe it. He's 28 inches outside, 24 inside. And I'm just speechless, I just can't believe it. It's like, a dream since you were a little tiny boy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long I sat there by myself looking at him and everything. And then I snapped out of it, and I realized I had two of my best buddies with me. I stood up and hollered. I said, "Hey, I got him down here." And John hollered back at me, John Pyatt, and he said, "Did you find blood?" I said, "No, I got him. He's right here. He's right here." Well, here they come, and their flashlights was flashing. Looked like airport. And here they come running down there. When they run up there, they went, "Oh my gosh, what in the world have you done?" And that was my number 3 in the world at the time.
That's wild, man. I mean, isn't amazing? Yeah. Like you said, 83. So I was born in 84, and I'm 40. So that's 41 years ago, Stan, and you recounted that hunt and recovery like it was last week.
Stan, I could listen to you tell deer stories all day long. We could just sit here for the next couple hours and do that. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of Lone Wolves for many years, the original Lone Wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we were using the .5 and the .75. Yeah. And the one thing that we talked about is like, what if there were no cables? Here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, a lot of that came, too, from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. Such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the Lone Wolf.
Every little detail of it,
Yeah.
Just, and I've had people tell me, well, I try that rattling, but that rattling don't ever work for me.
Uh-huh.
Well, guess I've rattled a lot of big bucks in and killed them. But what people don't realize about rattling is that you'll rattle 20, 30, 40 times for every time you rattle a deer in.
Mm-hmm.
But that one time that it works, you'll be hooked on it for life. And I have rattled in some giants.
Yeah.
And one of them was number 3 in the world at the time.
Wow.
Well, Stan, that's a discussion we've had a lot here, especially as we're in this part of October and obviously November kind of here on the horizon is, we talked to a lot of hunters on this thing, a lot of successful hunters. And if there's one big difference, I would say, besides scent control, right? Throw that one to the side. If there's one big difference you hear between all of these hunters is, do you call? Do you blind call? And there's a lot of guys that kill a lot of big deer that they're like, nope, I don't call at all. I don't do anything. Then you have other guys that are like, I'll grunt or I'll snort wheeze when I see him and I need it. And then you have other guys that are like, I'll blind call like crazy and I kill deer. It seems, like I said, they're all successful guys. But what do you think really makes it?
Mainly blind calling is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody that doesn't call, period.
The DeQuistos.
They're not even during the rut.
No.
Yeah, I guess they would be the exemption.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get it, Stan. I get it. And the way I would answer that is, it all works. Everybody. There's not one best way to do anything. It all works. And it's all a confidence thing too. Guys that don't like to blind call and rattle, I believe they probably don't like to do that because they're afraid if there is a buck out there coming, he hears that, he might not come that way.
Yep.
Well, that might be true. But I blind rattle all the time and I call. And when I see them, I call to them and I snort wheeze them. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I've rattled in big deer before, and the same exact buck a few days before, see him cutting across the timber or across the field or whatever, rattle at him, and he stops, looks up, and he turns and he don't come in. He goes the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Same exact buck. 2 or 3 days later, comes in or cruising through the timber, hit the horns and rattle, and he turns and he runs right to the tree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do it. I do it all. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But guys that say that you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that, they have to understand that my way is not the only way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of successful ways to do things and be successful.
Yeah.
And if you got confidence you do, then you need to do it.
Yeah.
Stan, can you talk us through like a rattling sequence? Like maybe start with what time of year will you start with that? And then what's kind of the procedure and how often, that kind of thing?
Don't start rattling usually until late October. And then I'll rattle through November and even a little bit in early December, the late post rut. And I rattle a lot then. I'll rattle about if I'm not seeing a lot of stuff, I'll rattle about every 30 or 45 minutes I'm in the tree, but my sequences are not very long, and I don't use antlers anymore. I use a rattle bag. Hunter Specialties came out a few years ago with a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Great big rattle bag that you could get the volume out of.
Yep.
And I started for years and years. I used antlers.
Yep.
You know, I went to that the rattle bags and stuff that you could get before then, even that Hunter Specialties had, was small. You couldn't get volume out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to out there in the timber, you know, walking through the leaves if the wind's blowing a little bit and he's 100 yards out there and you see him. I mean, you can rattle that little bag and he can't even hear you.
Yeah.
So using that big bag that really you can get a lot of volume. And the way I rattle, and I'm just going to tell you how I blind rattle.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious how you rattle if you see a deer.
Yep.
But when I blind rattle, I usually turn around and take the bag and just smack it against a tree where it's just a real sharp, loud crack. And then I rattle hard. Rattle, stop, stop. But I don't do it much over 30 seconds.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
or a minute most, and I'm done. And I hang it back up.
Yeah.
And I grab my bow. And when I get that bow, if I don't see anything, I'll usually do a few little tending grunts, you know, just little soft grunts.
Yeah.
And if I don't see anything, 45 minutes later, I do it again.
Yep.
You ever try to like ramp up to a rattle sequence with grunting or snort wheezing?
Say that again.
So do you ever like ramp up to a rattle sequence with, like, I would just call it a lower decibel calling, like with grunting or snort wheezing? Do you ever prelude a rattle sequence with some of that kind of calling?
Well, sometimes I do. You know, I do it different sometimes, but most of the time I don't if I'm going to rattle. Now, sometimes when I don't rattle, when I'm sitting there in the stand, I will do some soft calls. I will do some doe bleats, you know, and doe estrus bleats and small buck grunts in case something's close I can't see.
Yeah. Well, that would be the idea. You know, it's like if it's, you know, say it's November 2nd or 3rd and you're in tight, like on a bedding area, you know, and you think he might be bedded within like 150 yards. It's like my thought process would be, rather than creating a big disturbance that's easily pinpointed, I'd rather something more subtle, like some grunting, or like that it's going to get his attention and make him want to come over without, you know, buggering him out of there.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I get that, you know, and that's probably a good idea what you're doing there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think,
you know, I've also rattled at big deer. I killed a big deer over in Pike County one year, and I saw him across the field, up in the corner of the field, and he was bumping does around, and I rattled at him, and I know he heard me because he looked that way, but he wouldn't come in. He was bumping them does, and I rattled at him a couple times, and he wouldn't come in. Then he jumped the fence and went into the timber, and I didn't see him no more. In about 30 minutes or so, he jumped back over the fence. Here he come. He walked right to. I killed him. I never made a sound, but he remembered where that was coming from.
Yeah.
But he was sniffing around those and bumping them around, and they weren't in heat. And then he jumped the fence and came back and come all the way across that field about 200 yards, and I shot him right in front of the tree.
Isn't it, I think that's the thing. Anybody that's actually, rattled in, especially a big buck, if you've ever rattled in a big buck, I'm always amazed at how they pinpoint the damn tree. I mean, it's unbelievable.
They know exactly where it's coming from. Exactly. That's why if, something that's worked, I've killed a couple of bucks like this before I was ever filming, and I've had a couple buddies kill them, is just take your rattling antlers and go into timber and just start moving around. Stop, set up a sequence, put my hunter 50 yards, 40 yards in front of me, and try to get it to where there's something that pinches them down.
Yep.
And go through a blind sequence that way. And if it don't work, then get up, go 200-300 yards, different direction or whatever, and do it again. And I've rattled deer in and guys killed them. I've rattled deer in and killed them myself. But it's real hard if you're on the ground by yourself, if you rattle a buck in, because he knows exactly where that sound is.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get him killed when he comes in.
Yeah. I know, like, we hunt a lot of Ohio and Pennsylvania. Like, when we go out to Kansas, that's the one place that I really want, like, a strong set of rattling antlers to reach out there and touch them across those, like, big open areas. Because you'll watch those deer at damn near half a mile, and it's like, I want to crack those things together to get attention.
Oh, yeah. I love Kansas. I don't hunt there anymore, but I've hunted there a lot. I killed a big deer there. He's kind of broke up a little bit, but he was still 50s deer. And Barry was with me filming, and there was a hot doe, and there's about 100 yards, maybe 150 yards from me. And there was two. There was him, and there was a big whitehorn deer. And they was both big mature bucks. And they got in just a horrible fight down there over that doe. I could hear them down there in that creek bottom just tearing it up. And I waited, and as soon as they got done, I hit those rattling antlers and rattled, and then grunted a couple times, then hung them up. And when I was hanging those antlers up, I heard Barry say, "Here he comes." and obviously he was the loser, and here he come up. And he come all the way in through these little trees and these little red haw bushes and stuff, all the way in. He already had both ears flat back, and he was bristled up, and he was coming in, and I had a decoy in front of me, and he came right in. Then he seen that decoy. He just starts at, how they do.
Yeah.
And he just walked right up 15 yards, and I just pinwheeled him, and he run out there about 50 yards and stopped and looked around, thought, what was that? And boom, over he went on camera. So I him in after that buck fight.
Yeah. When did you start really putting decoys to work, Stan? Like, when did you start having that kind of epiphany that, like, hey, if they can see something and hear it?
That is a big one. You talked earlier about guys' confidence with calling and stuff. It's like, I'm great with the blind calling and all that. The decoy is the one that I'm like, oh boy, I don't know. Do I bring it? Is it too risky?
Yep.
It is. It's risky, but it also works real good. And the reason that when I first started using the decoy, is Greg Miller.
Yeah. Greg
Miller turned to it. Greg Miller was one of the first early guys to use decoys and kill big deer off of them. And I saw him, and so I started doing it, and I killed big deer off of them. But believe me, they don't always work. And sometimes they spook big bucks. Sometimes they don't. But a lot of times they do work. Mm-hmm. And if you're using a decoy, obviously you're in the open. You got your decoy out in the field, in a food plot or in a shortcut CRP or something, and when, most of the time when I see a deer, I rattle at him or grunt at him or do whatever kind of volume I need where he can hear me. And then that's when I've killed a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Is get their attention and they see the decoy, and then here they come. Yeah. They heard the vocalization, then they see the decoy, and here they come. And normally, and this is just my opinion, doesn't mean it's right, but it works really good for me, is when I set my decoy up, I always set my decoy up quartering towards me. Mm-hmm. Not directly towards me, but quartering towards me, to the right or to the left, just looking right over here, but facing in my direction. Mm-hmm. Because when a big buck, and I always use a buck decoy. The only exception to that is once in a while I'll take two of them. If I can drive in there on my Polaris, I'll take both buck decoys, but I take the antlers and the legs off of one of them, and I set it on the ground. It looks like a doe bedded down, and I'll set it right out in front of the decoy. But when that buck comes in, most of the time he will start circling, and he wants to come into the head end of that buck decoy. Guys that use doe decoys, just the opposite. They want to come into the back end of that. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I set my decoy up. And I like to set my decoy at least 25 yards away, because I want them to come around to get in front of that decoy, and I want to use my top pin. Yeah. And yeah, it worked, real good.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Spartan Forge.
Dude, maps. Mapping, right? Yeah. It all starts with a map, a visualization of a new property, into the fine-tuning of different food plots, different habitat projects, where those are going to go, all the way to sharing pins and looking kind of like beyond the layers with something like a LiDAR, which is exclusive to Spartan Forge as of now.
Yeah, and whether we're looking at it from a management side to put in food plots or switchgrass, or if we're taking a run and gun public approach on Kansas, it all starts with a map. It starts with a strategy there. You and I are going to have our own Blue Force team, which will allow us to run our own devices, but be able to see what you're adding or what I'm adding to that single map, which is really going to be critical moving forward this hunting season.
That's right. So if you're looking for a mapping software to try out this year, or maybe you're just like not getting what you need out of the one you're using currently, Bill's offered us a promo code of HUNTR20, HUNTR20, that you guys can use to get your own subscription up and rolling. Check out Spartan Forge, download the app, use that promo code, and we'll be using that this year.
Make sure you check out Spartan Forge.
How big of a part is the strategy? How do you ask that? How consistently are you using decoys? Like, so in the course of like October 25th through, to Thanksgiving, is it like every other time you're taking it out with you? Is it just when the situation is, hey, I've got an open spot here? Or?
Use them. I still use them, but I don't use them near as much as I used to. And the reason for that is not because I don't think that they work, but they do. But the reason for that is I'm hunting a lot in the timber anymore, and I won't use them in there. Mm-hmm. And I'm just hunting different than I used to. But I still have some sets this year. I've got 3 or 4 sets that are great decoy sets. And if I go to that set, then I'll take that decoy with me. Mm-hmm. If I don't, I won't.
Yeah. Even as you're saying that, I've got
setups for decoys, are very important. Only certain setups work. Mm-hmm. And you got to have the decoy out in the open, and you got to be able to see.
Yeah.
So you can bring them in.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
Does that Easy Gate stand come to mind?
Yeah.
Boy.
Be a perfect place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the decoy thing is just, and here's the other thing. I mean, I'll use me as an example, right? I grew up hunting Pennsylvania, right? My entire childhood through a teenager, we killed 90% 1.5-year-old bucks, right? It was a whole different ballgame. Doesn't mean that I didn't rattle or didn't grunt or anything like that, but I mean, the age structure just wasn't there to see, a lot of deer approach that. I mean, if I had a decoy out, right, that 1.5-year-old comes in the field, he's scared shitless, like, and tuck-tailed and running the other direction. But I think when, especially as you look now, I mean, I don't know if there's many places left across the United States that there isn't at least some like 3 and probably some 4-year-old bucks out and about and running around, to where, it's kind of a comfortability and confidence thing. I think it's the same with blind calling. Like, I grew up blind calling, and I feel very confident when I'm out there calling, and some people just don't. They'd rather be dead quiet and just hope that their setup's in the right place.
Yeah. Well, I agree with all that. It's just whatever works certain individuals. And, if you're successful in what you do, that's great.
Yep.
My way, sure not the only way.
I would assume,
but it's worked good for me.
I would assume, Stan, you've had a lot of setups with that decoy where you've had, bucks that you weren't going to shoot come in and light that decoy up.
Oh yeah, I have. And I've had them knock the legs and everything else out from under it. And anymore, if it's a young deer, a 1.5 or a 2.5-year-old deer, I won't let them do that. I'll make a noise or something.
Yep.
I'll snort wheeze out right there when I can tell they're getting ready to knock my decoy down, because I don't want to get down and mess the thing up and go set it back up and everything. So I'll just, something like that. And they don't spook and run off, but they don't like that, and they prance around a little bit, and then a little bit they'll walk off. I don't let them knock my decoy down anymore.
Yep, that makes sense.
I think that was kind of a subliminal fear of mine, is like if they do that and then they're like, that was a trap, what I mean? Do you worry about like years in the future? It's like all my 2-year-olds have plowed my decoy in the past and now they're of shooter quality, and it's like you don't want them to be prone to it, trained to it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's right. And that also brings me to another thing I'd like to say, is that rattling at these young bucks when you see them and bring it, why rattle at a buck if he's not a shooter?
Yeah.
Rattle. I mean, it's fun. There's no doubt about that. It's fun to rattle at them and bring them up and let them run over there and look around and stuff like that. But all that's doing is educating him when he gets to be 5 years old or older.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
So, but it's hard for guys not to do that. They see a little buck cutting across it. They hit those antlers and they call to him, and boy, he comes right in, looks all over. If you do that enough times, when he gets older, he's smart. He's not stupid.
Yeah.
Especially if he's getting a whiff of you, at the end of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a big one.
When you're hunting in the open, where you can see a long ways, not in the timber, you might be in the edge of the timber, but where you can see a long ways, that decoy is hard to beat, because if you see a big buck crossing the field, going from one spot to another during the rut, and if you hit the horns and you hit the grunt tube, you snort wheeze at him, most of the time he won't come in. He might come part of the way in, but most of the time he won't come all the way in if you do not have that decoy.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So,
do you have one? You have a decoy?
I just don't
same
use
one.
It. Yep, same one.
You bought it last year?
A couple years ago.
Has it been a couple years now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is that? The Dave Smith? Is that what they are?
Yep.
Yeah. Is there a certain brand or something that you run there, Stan?
I've been using that Dave Smith for the last few years. But I'll to be honest with you, my favorite decoy of all decoys that I've ever used is that little, but I called him Bucky Jr. It's that one that Delta makes.
Yep.
It's a small little decoy, and I love the stake system, because the stakes are about like 1/4-inch rebar, and they've got a little piece that sticks out about like that you can put your foot on, and they're easy to get into the ground even if the ground's hard. And then the legs have got their hollow hole. There's a hole in them, and they slide right down on top of them, so the wind can't blow them over or nothing. It's just a little bitty old 75-inch 8-point rack or whatever, but I've killed a lot of big deer with that decoy right there.
Yep.
And I started using that Smith decoy a few years ago when they started sponsoring the show, and it's the most realistic looking, and it works great. But using decoys for me is something that is user friendly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of decoys are not very user friendly. They're heavy. They're hard to carry. It's just,
Yeah.
And that little old Bucky Jr., I called him. I mean, he was just so easy to use.
Yeah.
And I would never, if I was going to, if I was going to hunt the same tree in the afternoon that I hunted in the morning, and it's a decoy spot, I just take my decoy down and I'd stash it in the brush right under my stand. But you always want to point the back out towards the field because you don't want that white belly shining in there.
Yep.
And then when I slip back in there at 12:30, 1 o'clock, all I got to do is just pick that decoy up and just go out and set it on those stakes. And I always spray the ground around the decoy. I spray the decoy with scent away and kill the scent off, but I never, ever use scent on the decoy. I put it on the ground right behind him. And I use dominant urine. Sometimes I use premium doe estrus plus. But I want some scent right there to keep them there if they come. But don't never put it on the decoy because they can smell that. You know, you want that decoy scent free because that's what he's doing when he comes in and he's circling. He's trying to get a whiff of that, you know, because that's how they identify one another.
Yeah. Yep.
I'd be willing to bet there's many a decoy stashed in the woods right now as we speak because either guys get, they stash them in there or they get tired. I've hunted stands literally like, just last night I was hunting an old leaser stand. You know, you find these old stands or whatever, and every once in a while you'll see them legs sticking up out of a Y tree. Somebody stashed them in there at some point.
Oh yeah.
Or you find I have found them shed hunting, and I found shed.
Oh,
I found the antlers off of a decoy.
Wow, yeah, that's impressive.
I've lost my antler off the decoy before by carrying it out over my back.
Yep.
And forget to take the antlers off of it. I remember one time over west of here on a place called the Grigsby. We were hunting and I carried my decoy out. And when I got to the truck, one antler was missing. It fell off. And when I went to the truck, I was walking across the stalk field.
Oh, yeah.
Pit cornfield. I looked and looked and looked and never could find that decoy. But you know what? I killed a big 5.5-year-old 4x4 giant with that decoy with one antler on it.
Yeah. That'll do it. Yeah, I mean, I remember carrying, it was in Kansas, I think, when I first was starting to use them, and I remember, carrying that thing across a big, either, cut bean field or CRP field, winds blowing.
On the 80.
Yeah, and I'm trying to balance that stupid thing over my shoulder.
That was that old Boss Buck or something it was called?
Yeah, or Glendale or something like that.
It was a monster. It was like the one that looked like this.
Legs were falling off of it, heads falling off of it, and it's like, yeah, that was one of those ones I just wanted to stash in the weeds and never find it again.
It's probably still out there.
Yeah, that Glendale buck. What did they call that? I know which one you're talking about. It looks like a 150 standing there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, in fact, I remember it.
No, the Glendale is the target.
I thought they made one though.
I don't think so. I think they called it the Boss Buck, the something Boss Buck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
something like that. If you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Well, I mean, it stands.
Well, you know,
okay.
It's good time to be out there, boys. I mean, this week coming up, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I guarantee you, Facebook will light up because they'll tip them over.
So I was going to ask that, we kind of had a pre-podcast that Jared and I were talking about stuff, and we were, looking at time frame. It's going to be that, whatever, 13th, 14th, 15th time frame of October. And it seems like that, if we catch the right cold front, especially with some precipitation with it, those scrapes end up getting pretty hot and a good chance to knock one over on a scrape in daylight at that time period.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, I'll be hunting. I'm not going this afternoon. It's in the 80s here. I've got some other things I need to do, and I don't know that I'll go again until Sunday. And then I don't like to hunt in the mornings right now, but I will when it turns cold. I go in the afternoon because Brenda and I are basically hunting off the ground right now.
Yep.
Just brushing us, just cutting some brush and brushing ourselves in on the ground. I probably won't go again until Sunday.
So if it drops into the mid 30s with this front coming up here, Stan, will you hunt in October morning?
Oh yeah,
you will.
Yeah.
Where are you hunting?
Yeah, because it's going to be 31, 32, 33 degrees right in there for 2 or 3 mornings in a row.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be in, and those bucks will be moving.
Yep. What's your setup look like? Where are you hunting during those mornings that early?
Brenda and I will probably be hunting in a box blind.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some box blinds set up down in the river bottom, and that's probably where we'll be.
Gotcha. Just catching them coming off of food back to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So not so much of a cruising pattern yet. Still more bed to food.
Right. They're coming off the food in the morning, but when it gets cold like that, and the first cold spells in October, when they're coming off that food, they're taking their time.
Yeah.
They're hitting scrapes, picking around. They're looking around. They're feeling it. They're feeling that cold weather. They're feeling, it's coming. They know that.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, so Stan, what's the season look like for you? You gonna just basically hang in the home state of Illinois with those 2 tags and with Brenda and the boys?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to fill both my tags in Illinois, and there's a good chance I'll go to Missouri.
Okay.
And try to kill one in Missouri, and maybe go in late season. Late season, what I'm talking about is after New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe go to Mississippi. I got a great buddy that's got a plantation on the river.
Oh yeah.
And I might go down there. I'll fly down there from Arizona. My cameraman fly in, or take Brenda and we'll go down there and try to get a big Mississippi buck killed.
Old swamp bucks,
but that's
down
it.
There.
Nice.
So that'd be 4 hunt. Yeah, I shot one down there several years ago on his place, big 8-pointer.
Yeah.
Shot him with a rifle, 7 mag at 420.
There's some big deer on the river down there.
Cam was filming with it is. We was filming with a big cameras in, and we had a doubler lens on it. It was 40 power, and he was 426 yards. And I had a rock solid rest, and I said, "What's he look like?" And he said, "He looks good." He said, "I'm zoomed all the way in," and he was walking, and I killed him walking. He just absolutely lights out. Just dumped him.
Oh man, that's fun.
People, you can't tell me somebody don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild, man. It's always this time, and the crazy thing is, here, we're filming this on the 10th, but it's landing on the 22nd. It goes fast, man. It's hard to emphasize to people that, I get it, life's busy, and you got work and family responsibilities and everything in between, but boy, we wait all year for this thing, and it's here and gone before we know it.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, but. Well, Stan, we appreciate you coming. Yeah, can you hear us, man? You got us?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Well, we appreciate
I got you.
We appreciate you coming on this morning or now into this afternoon and sharing some stories with us, man. It's been truly an honor. I mean, Jared and I have spent most of our lives watching Stan Potts kill big whitetails on TV and on the internet, and so to be able to sit down and hear some of those stories firsthand and talk with you, it's truly been a real pleasure, man.
Well, it's sure been a pleasure for me. I enjoy this, love this sort of thing. Anytime you need me, all you got to do is call.
All right, buddy.
Awesome.
I've had a blast, and it's a right time of year. It's just right now. It's coming.
Heck yeah.
We love it, man. Well, we appreciate it, and stick around here for a second. As soon as we wrap this up, we'll let you go.
Good luck to both of you guys. I hope you both shoot big ones, and everybody out there listening, I hope they have the best season and be safe. Don't hunt without a lifeline.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Sever.
Well, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is what our arrow setups are. And this year we're shooting the Sever broadheads. I think we're both shooting the new 2-inch titanium broadhead. And so, we're huge proponents of expandables. And I know we've had this argument back and forth with people, but we're
right and you're wrong, and you just need to accept it.
We just want to have a giant wound that pumps out blood. That's the bottom line.
We build our arrow setups and shoot bows, to maximize penetration, and we shoot broadheads that are going to give us the best blood trails, the most hemorrhage possible. And so part of those setups is we're also shooting the Easton arrows here coming up pretty soon. So we've shot the Victory in the past, and there's all kind of great arrow shafts on the market, but we're looking for a whole system from broadhead to arrow components to the arrow shaft itself. And, the more we look at some of these Easton shafts and the components that go with them, that setup's going to be really deadly for us.
Yeah, I'm actually using the Easton traditional axis right now in my traditional setups for both my recurve and my longbow. I've got a 100-grain brass insert on those, and then obviously I'm using a fixed blade broadhead on those specific shafts.
Right on.
So, but yeah, our goal is always to be shooting the best broadhead that we think is going to be the most lethal for our setups. We've done plenty of research. We believe in the Sever broadheads, and we hope you would check them out at Sever broadheads as well. Stand pots. Stand pots, everyone.
It's giving me a little, not anxiety is not the right word, but it's like I could just wheel from here and go back out and go find that buck is what it's got me feeling like.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you talk to a guy like Stan who's recounting in detail stories from 1983 on giant 200-inch typicals, it's like, yeah, it's that time of year, and it's cold. It's not cold like the mornings are. The afternoons are getting warm, but it's like, it is that time. And if you're listening to this, it's October 22nd at least. It's like, you're in it.
It's been a quick transition. It's like, it feels like it was just 2 weeks ago that it was
hot and dry,
endless
and
drought,
miserable.
and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it's here. It's go time. So fire it up and get after them.
Yeah. So that's it. It's if you take anything from Stan, you listen to that. It's like, this front coming up in October is a big one. And before you know it, if you're listening to this now, you're in the 20s, approaching Halloween. This is one of, in my opinion, the 23rd to the 31st of October is one of the best times to kill a big mature buck because they're not just full rut wild. It is still somewhat of a pattern, but they're on their feet, they're cruising, their testosterone's through the roof, and they are looking for a doe at this point.
It's go time, dude. What are we doing here? Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, there's not much. I was sitting on the computer the other day for working, and I'm like, why am I doing this?
I should be hunting. We should be going. We should be hunting.
So, but anyways, we appreciate Stan coming on. Awesome to hear from him and see him. Apologize. We had some technical difficulties, so hopefully Nick will be able to iron all this out. But yeah, just cool conversation to hear from the man, the myth, the legend, and give him a minute.
Give me a second.
Yep. And we appreciate everyone listening to episode 212 of HUNTR Podcast, and we'll catch you all next week.
Later.
Take me